Welcome back. Today our class has two parts. In the first part, we will learn the factors affecting the internal resistance of a cell. All of us know what is internal resistance of a cell. It is the resistance offered internally by a cell to the current flow. In the second part of the class, we will see how to solve complicated circuits. To solve simple circuits, we can use Ohm's law, that is V is equal to IR. So if we know V and I, we can find R, or if we know I and R, then we can find the voltage and so on. So this way we can solve simple circuits. But if the circuit is a complicated one, if it consists of more than one source of EMF, or if it is in the form of a network, then how will we solve? How will we find the current through different branches of the network? How to find the current through different branches of the circuits? How to find the resistance of different branches? So this we can achieve using a special kind of law which is called Kirchhoff's law. So in the second part of the class, we will discuss Kirchhoff's law and we will learn to solve the complicated circuits. So we may start now. So today's first part of the discussion will be the internal resistance of a cell. What is internal resistance of a cell? The opposition offered by the electrolyte of the cell to the flow of electric current through it is called internal resistance. So internal resistance is nothing but the objection to the current flow from the part of electrolyte. And this is how we normally draw a cell. You know, there will be an electrolyte, then there are two electrodes. One electrode is called anode, which is the positive electrode. Then there is negative electrode or cathode, and positive charge is present at anode and negative charge is present at cathode. So some kind of chemical reaction will take place in the electrolyte here, and ions will be liberated, and these ions will go to the respective electrodes. So this is the fundamental part of a cell, chemical cell. So this we have already learned from our elementary classes. Then what are the factors that affect the internal resistance of a cell? So when these ions move through this electrolyte, there will be some resistance offered by the electrolyte itself. So some kind of chemical reaction will take place, and these ions will move towards the respective electrodes. That is, negative ions will move towards the cathode and positive ions will move towards the anode. This we know already. And when these ions move through the electrolyte, there will be some resistance offered by this electrolyte itself. And that is what is called internal resistance of the cell. Then what are the factors that affect the internal resistance of the cell? The first one is, larger the separation between the electrodes of the cell, more the length of the electrolyte through which the current has to flow, and consequently a higher value of internal resistance. In short, if the distance of separation between the two electrodes is larger is the internal resistance. So larger the distance between the electrodes, larger the internal resistance. So this is due to the large distance to be traveled by the ions towards the respective electrodes. So in short, larger the distance between the electrodes, higher the internal resistance. So that is one factor that will affect the internal resistance. Then greater the conductivity of the electrolyte, lesser is the internal resistance of the cell. That is, internal resistance depends on the nature of the electrolyte. So there will be some electrolyte for which the conductivity is less. In that case, resistance will be, internal resistance will be more. and if the conductivity is a higher value, then conduction is more or internal resistance is less. So that means the nature of the electrolyte affect the internal resistance of the cell. The third factor is the third factor is internal resistance of a cell is inversely proportional to the common area of the electrodes dipping in the electrolyte. That means if there is more area dipped into this electrolyte, there will be more area available for the ions to be deposited. So the internal resistance of a cell is inversely proportional to the common area of the electrodes dipping in the electrolyte. So if there is more area available, there will be more area available for the ions to be deposited. So that will increase the, or that will enhance the conduction, or we can say it will decrease the resistance. So more the area of the electrodes dipped in the electrolyte, less will be the internal resistance, or you can say internal resistance is inversely proportional to the area of the electrodes. Internal resistance is inversely proportional to area of the electrodes available for deposition. Then a fourth factor is the internal resistance of a cell depends on the nature of electrodes. Internal resistance of a cell depends on the nature of the electrodes. So sometimes there will be electrodes which are having more conduction property, so that will enhance the conduction. That means it will decrease the internal resistance. And if the electrodes are having less conduction property, then it will increase the internal resistance. So these are the four factors that influence the internal resistance of a cell. Now technically the internal resistance in a circuit can be drawn like this. Here E represent the EMF of the cell. We will discuss about this EMF shortly. So E is the EMF of the cell, and the small r represent the internal resistance. Small v represent the potential drop across the internal resistance, and this capital R represent the external resistance, and the capital V represent the potential drop across the external resistance. So there will be a potential difference between the two electrodes of the cell, and there will be some drop across this internal resistance, which is small v. Then there will be some drop across, there will be a bigger drop across the external resistance, which is the capital V. So that means EMF will be equal to, or potential difference between the two electrodes of a cell will be equal to potential drop across the external resistance plus potential drop across the internal resistance. That is, E is equal to V plus V. Capital V is the potential drop across the external resistance, small v is the potential drop across the internal resistance. And from Ohm's law we know that V is equal to IR. Therefore V is equal to I into R, where here R is the external resistance, small r is the internal resistance. In short, we can write I is equal to E by R plus R, and this relation is called a circuit equation. I is equal to, so the maximum current available is I is equal to E divided by R plus R. So again we can write E is equal to IR plus IR, and from this equation we can find an expression for the internal resistance R. Small r represent the internal resistance. So now E minus IR is equal to IR let this be equation 1. Then we are dividing equation 1 by IR, where this R is the external resistance. Therefore E divided by IR minus IR by IR is 1. So E by IR minus 1 is equal to IR by IR. So these two I's will be cancelled each other. Therefore now we can write E by V, because IR is equal to V from Ohm's law. V is equal to IR. Therefore it is E by V minus 1 is equal to R by R. Now from this equation we can find the internal resistance small r as small r is equal to so first R by R is equal to E by V minus 1. Therefore small r is equal to E by V minus 1 into capital R, where capital R represent the external resistance. So from this we can find the internal resistance of a cell. Now what is E? E is the EMF, V is the voltage. And what is the difference between EMF and voltage? Actually EMF means it is a short form of electromotive force. It is the potential difference between the ends of a cell when it is not connected to any circuit. And voltage means it is the potential difference between the ends of a cell when it is in a circuit. That is the difference. So we will just list out the basic difference between EMF and voltage. So EMF is the maximum potential difference between the two electrodes of a cell when no current is drawn from the cell. That is when the circuit is open. And voltage is the potential difference between any 2 points in a closed circuit. Closed circuit means there is a current flow from the positive side of the battery to the negative side of the battery. The situation is like this. So this is an open circuit. Here you can see this is a cell, and this cell is connected to an external resistance through a switch, and this switch is open, right? The switch is open, and such a condition is called open circuit. Now the potential difference between the positive and negative electrodes is called EMF. So the maximum potential difference is available when the circuit is open or when there is no current flow. On the other hand, a closed circuit means the switch is closed. That means now there is a current flow from the positive side of the battery through this external resistance to the negative side of the battery. So this is a case where the potential difference between the two electrodes will be less than that of the EMF. Since there is a current flow between the two electrodes, gradually the potential difference will decrease. So the maximum potential difference is available when there is no current flow, and that condition is called EMF. When the circuit is closed, electrons will start to flow, or there will be a current set up in the circuit, and the potential difference gradually decrease. The potential difference across the ends of the cell when there is a current flow or when the circuit is closed is called the voltage. That is the basic difference between the EMF and voltage. So EMF means it is a potential difference between the two electrodes when the circuit is open, and voltage is the potential difference between the two electrodes when the circuit is closed. Here there is no current flow through the circuit. Here there is a current flow through the circuit. Then second point is, it is independent of the resistance of the circuit because there is no current flow. What you are finding is the difference between the potential difference between the potential across these two ends, and it is proportional to the resistance between given points, because higher the resistance there will be higher potential drop. Third point, the term EMF is used only for source of EMF. It is used only for the source of EMF. So we cannot replace the word EMF with voltage. So this represents the source of the potential or source of EMF. On the other hand, it is measured between any 2 points of the circuit. So you can measure the voltage across any 2 points, but EMF you measure across the positive and negative electrodes only. So that is the source of EMF. So you are measuring the EMF across these positive and negative electrodes, and you are measuring voltage across any part of the circuit. So between these two ends, between the two ends of R, you can measure the voltage. Between across the two electrodes of the cell, you can measure the voltage. That is the difference. Fourth point, it is greater than the potential difference between any 2 points in a circuit. On the other hand, voltage is greater than the EMF when the cell is being charged. Otherwise, normally voltage will be less than the EMF. Voltage will be less than the EMF. Normally, we use the source of EMF in some circuits. If the circuit is a very simple one, we can find the resistance, current or voltage using Ohm's law. That is, V is equal to IR is the Ohm's law relation we know. But if the circuit is complicated, or if the circuit is like a network, then we need some other law to solve this network and find the current, resistance or voltage of the circuit, or voltage across different parts of the circuit. And Kirchhoff's law is one such a law that will allow us to find the voltage, current or resistance in a circuit. So you consider a case where there is a junction of current. Here you can see I1 and I4 are in green color, and these two currents are coming to the point O. So we have altogether 5 conductors where I1 and I4 are coming to the junction O. I2, I3 and I5 are the currents which are leaving the junction O. So we may write I1 plus I4 is equal to I2 plus I3 plus I5, because these two currents are coming to the junction and these two currents are leaving the junction. So current coming to the junction is equal to current leaving the junction. Therefore I1 plus I4 is equal to I2 plus I3 plus I5, or I1 plus I4 minus I2 minus I3 minus I5 is equal to 0. So this way we can rewrite the previous equation. Now again, I1 plus I4 plus minus I2 plus minus I3 then plus minus I5 is equal to 0. That means what? That means the sum of the currents, right? The algebraic sum of the electric current at a junction in any electrical network is always 0. And this is known as Kirchhoff's first law or Kirchhoff's current law, or also called the junction rule. So this is one law which will help us to solve the different currents at a junction. So algebraic sum of the currents meeting at a junction will be 0. That is the short form. The algebraic sum of the currents meeting at a junction is equal to 0. So here minus I2, minus I3, minus I5 represent the currents leaving the junction, and plus I1 plus I4 represent the current coming to the junction. Of course, these are not vectors. Current is not a vector because current will not obey the law of vector addition. So current is a scalar quantity that we all know. But here this sign is given just to show that negative sign will show the current is leaving the junction, and a plus sign shows the current is coming to the junction. Then second law is also called voltage law or the loop rule. It says that algebraic sum of all the potential drops and EMFs along any closed path in an electrical network is always 0. So we may simplify this statement with the help of an example. So this law is related to electrical network. So to understand this law, first we need an electrical network. So here there is electrical network. That means it is not a case of a single cell and a single resistance as we normally draw in the case of Ohm's law. So in the case of Ohm's law, normally we draw a single cell or single source of EMF and then a single resistance. But here you can see there are two sources of EMF or two voltage sources, and there are three resistances, and there are loops also. So a loop means a closed path is always a loop. So here A, B, C, A is a loop, then A, D, C, A is another loop, A, B, C, D, A is a third loop. So there are different loops also. So this forms a network, and in such a network, how will you find the voltage across different resistors, or how will you find the EMF of a cell? For that purpose, we can apply the Kirchhoff's second law or the voltage law. Here from E1 there is a current I1 coming, from the cell E2 there is a current I2 coming, and I1 and I2 currents meet at the junction A. Then from A, the total current, that is I1 plus I2, will flow through R2. So I1 plus I2 current flow through R2, and again at the junction C, they will be again divided as I2 and, or they will be branched out as I2 and I1. I1 will go back to the E1 and I2 will go back to E2. So this is the arrangement. R1, R2, R3 are the three resistors in the circuit. Now, to solve this network, or to solve this network, what we are using is a given direction for the current and for the current. So normally we take clockwise direction positive. So the current which is in the clockwise direction can be taken as positive. And this direction is considered for all the loops, whether it is A, B, C, A, C, D, A, or A, B, C, D, A. For all the loops we take the clockwise direction as positive. So the current in the clockwise direction can be taken as positive, and if the current is in the anti-clockwise direction, then it should be taken as negative. Then for the cell, if the direction is clockwise, that means here in this case the direction is from positive to negative. So now this E1 will be taken as negative, from positive to negative. So it is negative E1. And for I1, the direction is opposite to the clockwise direction. So I1 can be taken negative. So this we will solve with an example. So again we can just list the different loops. The loops are A, B, C, A. So this is the loop A, B, C, A is one loop. Then our second loop is A, C, D, A. So this is a second loop. A loop means it is a closed path. So A, C, D, A forms a closed path. So it is a loop. So A, C, D, A is the second loop. Then the third loop is A, B, C, D, A. So A, B, C, D, A forms a closed path. So that is the third loop. Now we may just introduce this Kirchhoff's law for the first loop. And our first loop is A, B, C, A. So A, B, C, A is the first loop. And we are going to apply this Kirchhoff's law for the loop A, B, C, A. And according to this law, algebraic sum of all the potential drops. Potential drop means there is a potential drop across the resistance R1. That is, potential drop means it is V is equal to IR. So I into resistance is the potential drop across the resistance R1. The potential drop across R2 is IR, but here current is I1 plus I2. So I1 plus I2 into R2 is the potential drop across R2, or the voltage across R2. And across R3 it is again IR. IR means here I is I2 into R3. So V is equal to IR is the form of potential drop, and here it is I2 into R3. So I2 R3 is the potential drop or voltage across R3. I1 R1 is the voltage across R1, that is a potential drop across R1. So sum of potential drops and EMF. So E1 is the EMF of the loop ABCA, and E2 is the EMF of the loop ACDA. And if you take the third loop, which is ABCDA, there are two sources of EMF, that is E1 and E2. So for the loop ABCA, we can apply this Kirchhoff's law as minus E1. Why it is minus E1? Because this is the clockwise direction, and so in the clockwise direction we move from positive to negative. So to final destination is negative. So it is minus E1. And there is no other source of EMF in the closed path. So that means now this EMF, the source of EMF plus, because it is a sum. So the source of EMF plus potential drop across R1, which is I1 R1. So I1 R1 is the potential drop across R1. And what is the sign? As I told you, clockwise direction should be taken as positive, but the current is opposite to the clockwise direction, so it is negative. So minus E1 minus I1 R1. Then potential drop across R2. In the loop, R2 is the second resistance. And what is the voltage across R2? It is I1 plus I2 into R2. And if you look at this direction of current, it is opposite to the direction of clockwise. It is opposite to clockwise direction, right? So opposite to clockwise direction means it is negative. So negative I1 plus I2 into R2. Negative I1 plus I2 into R2, and is always 0. That means what? Equal to 0. So this is how you are writing this Kirchhoff's law mathematically for the first loop, that is for the loop ABCA. Now this equation can be rewritten as minus E1 minus I1 R1 minus I1 R2 minus I2 R2 equal to 0. So this way we can expand that equation. So this equation represents the mathematical form of Kirchhoff's second law for the loop ABCA. Then similarly we can solve this second law for the loop ACDA. So for the loop ACDA, how this equation will come? So our loop is ACDA. So this is the loop. ACDA represent the loop for the present discussion, and this is the clockwise direction. So as I told you, clockwise direction current can be taken as positive. So I1 plus I2 should be positive, and here I2 is also clockwise direction. And what about the EMF? Here EMF is negative to positive. So final destination is positive. So it is positive E2. So positive E2. Then what about the potential drop across R2? Potential drop across R2 means it should be of the form of IR, and the current through the resistance R2 is I1 plus I2. So I1 plus I2 into R2, it is positive because the direction is in the clockwise way. Then similarly across R3 the current is I2, and the current I2 is also in the clockwise way. So I2 can be taken as positive. So positive I2 R3, that is equal to 0. Again this can be rewritten as, or it can be expanded as, E2 plus I1 R2 plus I2 R2 plus I2 R3 is equal to 0. This equation is the mathematical form of Kirchhoff's second law for the loop AC dA. Then what about this Kirchhoff's equation for the loop ABC dA? So here again we take the clockwise direction as the positive for the current. So that means what? So if you take this clockwise direction, you know current I1 is opposite to clockwise direction, so I1 should be negative. Then if you come like this, current I2 is in the clockwise direction, so I1 should be negative and I2 should be positive. Then what about the source? So for the source E1 we are moving from positive to negative, so final destination is negative for E1. So it is minus E1. E1 should be negative, minus E1. And for E2, if you move like this, you can see that you are moving from negative to positive. So final destination is positive. So plus E2. So we may take minus E1 and plus E2. That means minus E1 minus I1 R1, then plus I2 R2, then plus E2 is equal to 0. Or we can rearrange this equation as minus E1 plus E2 minus I1 R1 plus I2 R2 is equal to 0. So this is the Kirchhoff's equation, Kirchhoff's second law equation for the loop ABCDA. And this Kirchhoff's law is best understood in a circuit which is called Wheatstone's bridge. So in Wheatstone's bridge we can apply this Kirchhoff's law and we can find the unknown resistance. So first we will see what is a Wheatstone's bridge. So a Wheatstone's bridge is a network of 4 resistors as shown here. So this is how the 4 resistors are connected, and there is one source of EMF also. P, Q, R, S represent the 4 resistors, and between the points B and D we are connecting a galvanometer. So this G represent a galvanometer. Now using this network we can find unknown resistance. That means you are arranging these 4 resistors as shown here, as a bridge as shown here, and if any 3 of these resistors are known, we can easily find the unknown resistance, and this is attained by solving the previously learned Kirchhoff's law. So to apply Kirchhoff's law, we know we need some loops. So here A, B, D, A is one loop, then B, C, D, A is a second loop, then A, B, C, D, A is a third loop, then A, D, C, E, A is a fourth loop. So we can construct many loops, or we can discover more and more loops if we analyze this circuit more closely. Now, for the time being, we are taking only two loops. The first loop is A, B, D, A. So for the loop A, B, D, A, we are going to apply Kirchhoff's law. So this is our clockwise direction, and this clockwise direction current can be taken as positive. That is, I1 can be taken positive. Then from the source E, the current is coming, I is coming out. At the junction A, the current I will be divided as I1 and I minus I1. So the current I is reaching at the junction A. Then a small part of I will go to P, or a small portion of the current I will pass through the resistance P. And what is remaining? I minus I1 is remaining. So of the current I1 is passing through P. What is remaining is I minus I1. That I minus I1 is passing through the resistance R. Then at the junction B, again this out of the I1 current, Ig will pass through galvanometer. Ig represent the current through the galvanometer. So some part of I1, some part of the current I1, which is Ig, will pass through the galvanometer. And what is the balance? The balance will be I1 minus Ig. So the balance current I1 minus Ig will pass through the resistance Q. Then at the junction D, I minus I1 is coming. Similarly, Ig is also coming to the junction D. So from D, the total current will be I minus I1 plus Ig. So I minus I1 current will meet Ig at the point D. Then afterwards, I minus I1 plus Ig will flow through the resistance S. At the junction C, these two currents will meet. That means I minus I1 plus Ig and I1 minus Ig will meet. And when you take the sum of these currents, you can see what is remaining is only I. So this I current go back to the negative terminal of the battery. So this is how the current is flowing through the network. Then for the loop ABDA, we can see that I1 is in the clockwise path, Ig is also in the clockwise path, but I minus I1, this I minus I1 is opposite to the clockwise path. So this should be taken as negative. And in this loop there is no source of EMF, right? In the loop ABDA, there is no source of EMF. So simply take the sum of potential drop across the different resistors. So across P it is I1 into P, because P represents the resistance. So I1P, and here plus I minus I1 into R is the resistance across. I minus I1 is the current through the part R. Now for the loop ABDA, we may write the Kirchhoff's loop rule. So this is our clockwise direction. So I1 is in the clockwise direction, Ig also clockwise direction, I minus I1 opposite. So plus I1P plus IgG minus I minus I1 into R should be equal to 0. Here G here this G represent the galvanometer and G represent the resistance of the galvanometer. So potential drop across the galvanometer is Ig into the resistance of the galvanometer. The resistance of the galvanometer is represented by this G. So I into R means Ig into G. So that is why it is Ig into G. Now this can be rewritten as I1P plus Ig into G is equal to, so this negative term we are taking to the other side of the equation. So it is plus I minus I1 into R, and let this be equation 1. Now similarly for the second loop, that is B, C, D, B, we can find another set of equation. For the loop B, C, D, B, the clockwise direction current should be positive. That means I1 minus Ig should be positive, but I minus I1 plus Ig is negative, and here this Ig is also negative. Therefore, across the resistance Q, the current is I1 minus Ig. So I into R means I1 minus Ig into Q. Then the next current is through the resistance R, which is not in the clockwise direction. So it is negative I minus I1 plus Ig into the resistance is S. And the next resistance is that of G, galvanometer, and the current is not clockwise, so it is minus Ig into G is equal to 0. So this is the equation for the loop BCDB. This can be rewritten as I1 minus Ig into Q is equal to, now these two equations, these two negative equations are taken to the other part of the equation. These two negative part of the equation, that is I minus I1 plus Ig into S plus Ig into G, right? So the final equation is I1 minus Ig into Q is equal to I minus I1, it should be plus Ig. So here it is plus Ig, this is plus Ig, sorry. So plus Ig into S plus IgG is the second equation. So finally this Ig will be cancelled. So it does not make any change, any difference in the final equation. But this Ig is positive. This I minus I1 plus Ig into S plus IgG is equal to plus IgG. That is the equation 2. Now the current through the galvanometer is made 0. That is Ig should be 0. So how Ig is made 0? By adjusting the values of the resistors P, Q, R and S, we can make the current through the galvanometer 0. And when the current through the galvanometer is made 0, we say the bridge is balanced. So the balancing condition of the bridge is Ig is equal to 0. So repeat, by adjusting the values of P, Q, R and S, we can make the current through the galvanometer 0. That is Ig is equal to 0. And when the current through the galvanometer is made 0, the bridge is in the balancing condition. So when Ig is made 0 by adjusting the values of P, Q, R and S, then there will be some changes for these equations 1 and 2. So Ig equal to 0 is the balancing condition of the bridge, and when the balancing condition of the bridge is attained by adjusting the values of P, Q, R and S, what change will happen to the equation 1? So equation 1 will become I1 plus this Ig will be 0. So this Ig will be 0. Therefore only I1P is present on the left hand side. So I1P is equal to, on the other side it is I minus I1 into R. Now this is equation 3. Similarly for equation 2, this Ig will be 0. So what is remaining is I1 into Q. So I1 into Q is equal to, on the right hand side, this Ig is 0. Therefore there is no Ig in this equation, in this bracket. So I minus I1 into S plus this Ig is again 0. Therefore this Ig into G will vanish. So what is remaining is only I minus I1 into S. And let this be equation 4. Now we are finding equation 4 by 4. Equation 3 divided by 4. Now we are dividing equation 3 by 4. So on the LHS it is I1P by I1Q equal to, on the RHS, I minus I1 into R divided by I minus I1 into S. So the common terms will be cancelled. That is I1 will cancel on the LHS and I minus I1 will cancel on the RHS. And finally what is remaining is P by Q is equal to R by S. So this P by Q is equal to R by S is also called a balancing condition of the bridge. So when current Ig is made 0, we will get the condition P by Q is equal to R by S. In other words, Ig is made 0, or the galvanometer current is made 0 only if this condition P by Q is equal to R by S is attained. So once we attain the condition P by Q equal to R by S, then the current through the galvanometer will be 0. So P by Q is equal to R by S is also called a balancing condition of the bridge. The logic is, to make the galvanometer current 0, P by Q is equal to R by S should be attained. So it is also called a balancing condition of the bridge. So when people may wonder why this name Wheatstone bridge. So this type of connection is called a bridge connection, and it was first innovated. It was first introduced. This bridge connection was first introduced by Samuel Hunter in 1833. Then this bridge connection was later modified and more popularized by Charles Wheatstone. So that is why this name Wheatstone's bridge. He innovated this bridge in 1843, and after this innovation, this bridge became more popular, and this bridge connection is largely used to find the unknown resistance of a network. So if out of these four resistors, if 3 are known, we can easily find the unknown resistance, the fourth unknown resistance. So if P, Q and R are known, then we can find the S. So if any 3 resistors are known, we can easily find the fourth unknown resistance. That is application of Wheatstone's bridge. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching.